All right, welcome, guys. Welcome, guys, girls, and everyone else to the Brand Identity Design Podcast. My name is Jason. I'm your host, and today we are going to be discussing about color, how color feeds your soul with Peggy Van Allen. And this is going to be a very exciting and interesting conversations. Just in case, guys, if you are actually new to my podcast, I want to let you know this is a live podcast which we are recording over LinkedIn. It's also simulcasted on Clubhouse as well as on Twitter Spaces. Okay, we appreciate your love and support. We appreciate you helping us out with our show. We are very, very grateful for the progress we have made with our show. So to give you a heads up on what the show is about, we are currently doing like a series called as the Dark Side of Entrepreneurship. The aim of my show is to educate entrepreneurs about business, share kind of ideas, recommend strategies on how to deal with adversities, and also to how to run business in a most effective and efficient way. And I do this by finding interesting people, interesting executives, C-suite level executives, or even entrepreneurs and founders who are willing to share their personal and professional experience with all of our listeners. And I've been doing this for almost, I think around a year, maybe slightly more than a year now. And today is my 88th live podcast episode. 88 interviews I have done over the course of time. Very exciting, very interesting. I have learned quite a lot. One of the reasons I started doing these interviews is to get a hold and know-how about business myself. I had a lot of questions as a designer, and I over time by interviewing people, it has really helped me grow and display and demonstrate a lot of interesting skill set over the course of time. So I'm very grateful for all of my guests. So, let me not bore you with too much data. Let's actually deep dive into this conversation. So thank you so much for joining this insightful podcast with Peggy Van Allen. She's a color anthropologist who you see next to me. I would highly encourage all of you guys to follow her because we will be exploring the role of color in forecasting, visual perception, brand building, behavioral psychology. I can promise you this is not like a regular show about color. Our questions are going to be very, very interesting. Okay, and we are going to be actually focus color at a very deep level as much as possible, and we are going to utilize this podcast as a medium to showcase what Peggy's skill set is, what her expertise is, and what's her understanding about color. Okay, so hang in tight. I'm going to give a quick intro who Peggy is. So Peggy, obviously, as you know, from the cover we have on this, the thumbnail we have on the podcast, she's a color anthropologist. She's also the founder of Color Fuel. As a designer and color anthropologist, Peggy brings a wealth of expertise in visual communication, trend research, visual merchandising, palette development to her role in Color Fuel. Her unique combination of skills and her effect, helps her to effectively communicate the complexity of color to clients, providing both inspiration and education. She's driven to demystify color while preserving its magic and Peggy helps clients to select the right colors at the right time. She has over 20 years of experience in this field, and she's also a very active member of a group called as Color Marketing Group. It's also known as CMG. Okay, she has served on various committees, facilitating workshop, and has held the term on the board of directors. After serving 2 years as a vice president of color forecasting, Peggy was appointed as the CMG president, which is the color marketing group president for the year 2020 to 2022 and 2023 and 2024. So please give Peggy a round of applause virtually, guys. Welcome Peggy to the Brand Identity Design podcast. So nice to have you.
Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here. Always a great day to talk about color.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a lovely day to speak about color. I want to actually, start off with a quote by TM George. I think that's how this name is pronounced. He says, "Color is the language of the soul, and on the canvas, it can speak volumes without ever uttering a word." Okay, now what I want to ask you first, Peggy, is that what is your fascination with color, first of all? What kind of, what pushed you into color? Okay, being a color anthropologist. And I really don't know what kind of audience are you catering to? Like, what kind of people approach you for what kind of help? How are you helping them out? Why didn't you stick around being just a designer? Because, designers also have a sense and understanding about color. You could have had additional means of revenue stream. Why did you stick to just being a specialist in this? And I'm not saying that it's a bad idea, but I just want to understand, like, how are you managing all of this by just focusing specifically on color?
That's an interesting question. I think it's in what I found by speaking with other people who work in the field of color is we all kind of ended up here in a roundabout way. I don't think there's too many people that go to school and say, "Hey, I'm going to become a color expert." I started out in my degree is in graphic design, so visual communications. I've always been drawn to that. Maybe that's because I'm always hesitant to do things like podcasts because I'm verbally challenged. I would rather do things visually. I'd rather like lay out all my messages visually. So, but I started out in graphic design working for a paint company. And when that company was acquired by a larger paint company, my role expanded and I had the opportunity to grow more in the direction of color. And I learned so much more about color. And I also developed an appreciation for the power of color. And when I was in that role, I also started going to Color Marketing Group, and I joined, and it really expanded my vision of the possibilities of color as a career. All these people come together to talk about color forecasting and other things related to color. And so it opened my eyes to how much color touches so many different fields that I had never even considered before. I mean, my original background is in art, and so that's sort of where I've always thought I would be, somewhere in that field. And to me, art, color is art as well. So, but the fact that color is just so it touches us emotionally, and like I said, it's just so powerful. There are just so many possibilities to what color can do for people personally, but in business and through products and selling and all of that. So that's sort of why I feel like sharing that with the world is kind of my goal, is just to really let people see how much there is to color. I mean, it's kind of a complex topic once you start talking about it. um, but it really it's interesting, and I think and everybody sort of has an opinion about color, so it's kind of fun in that respect.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, a part of that question was what kind of people would reach you for what kind of
So
solution?
for my
Yeah.
clients, yeah. So my clients are I work with businesses, so all types of businesses and really most of my clients are in the home industry, so building products and paint. Still do a lot of work with paint companies, but all anything that any product that you work with or that any company may produce to sell has to have a color. So someone has to decide what that color is going to be. And most of my research around colors and color forecasting is kind of all encompassing. Even though I focus a lot with my clients that are in the home industry, I look at all other industries as well, so I can do color help in other industries that are related, not just to home industries.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I have an overview, but let's dissect and go dig down further. I have interesting questions for you today. Now, I want the audience as well as myself to understand how does the study of color anthropology differ from other disciplines related to color? And I also have a part two of that question. Do you think the study contribute to our understanding of the human experience and emotions?
Yes, so that is the question people always ask me is, what does that mean that I'm a color anthropologist? To me, it is the study of human behavior. That's what anthropology is. And when I study human behavior, I'm looking at it from the perspective of color. And it's a little different than, say, color psychology or color science, because those things are talking about how color physiologically affects you, or the perceptions of color. Um, but I kind of roll it all together, looking at those different aspects of color with both the psychology of it. To me, color is psychology, it's math, it's art, it's science, it's all of those things. But the anthropological aspect of it is how as humans do we experience that color. Does
All
that
right,
answer the
all right,
question?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, let's chew on this a little further. When you say it's about, you said it's a study of human behavior. How are you translating this exactly?
So what we want to do when we're doing our color forecasting, we are looking at how are people's, what is their mindset, all of the things that are happening around them in the world, world events, or just different cyclical events. How how what is their mindset, and then through that mindset of how they're living, how does that affect their perceptions of color around them, or their desire to gravitate to certain colors at different times on different products that they might be purchasing.
Oh, okay, okay. So I think what you're trying to say is that based on a cultural or a historical significance of a color in relation to human, you try to craft a meaning and you try to figure out how that would behave in today's situation and see how. Am I understanding that right? Kind of.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, it's a process, and it's a process of looking back over time. That's how we sort of learn how to do the forecasting, as we look back over time and see how maybe some specific event might have occurred and how that affected people's, whatever their frame of reference. Or, I mean, that's one way to look at the color forecasting, and how we can predict how people will, um, like I said, gravitate to certain colors. But there, of course, are other factors that play into it as well, not just, those events, but understanding, like you mentioned, culturally. It's important to understand that we don't all look at color the same way, and different cultures have different historical, ways of looking at color, or, just the way they've experienced life. There's just so many different ways that we all talk about color. The communication of color varies from culture to culture, so it's important. I mean, it's a big wide world that's just kind of becoming a little bit smaller as well. So even if you're not necessarily, forecasting color for a product where the target market is, say, North America, you might want to expand that and look at other cultures as well, because we have so many other people that live in North America too, that come from other cultures. And it's important to understand, what their references are to color families, and how, they might view them differently. And like I said, the communication aspect of it is important too, because in different languages we talk about color differently. In Japan, they may have one word for blue and a different word for light blue, um, completely different word. And I think in I think I was reading somewhere that in Russia there's like four different words that describe the color blue. So it's like very different culturally how we experience color.
Oh, absolutely. It's starting to make sense to me. All right. Okay. Let's deep dive further. So could you discuss the role of color and how do you think it has evolved over the course of time?
Sure. So we can look at it several different ways, but I think like if you look at ancient cultures, they often used color in religious or symbolic ways. In ancient Egypt, it was believed there were supernatural powers, and those certain colors that had those powers were used to decorate their tombs and their temples. As we move into the Renaissance, we think about art. I think when we look historically at color, we'll look at the art world and how different colors were used and had different meanings. You can, you know, it was most of it was based on like the artwork that was commissioned at that time was all mainly by religious, you know, people that would populate their churches with all of this artwork, and so there was a lot of symbolism behind the colors that were used then. But it was also limited to whatever pigments might have been available at the time for artists to use. So over time, that changed as newer pigments were found or discovered. They could achieve different colors, and so that would shift what people were seeing out there in the world, in the art world. And as we got into the 19th century with the Industrial Revolution, again, then the new technologies allowed pigments to be made differently. They were more easily available to people. So we would see a greater usage of color in product design and in decoration. Um, moving, into the 20th century, more technologies and materials, color television in the 50s. I mean, that completely rocked people's world. All of a sudden, they could see all these different colors of what somebody else's living room might have looked like in another, part of the country. So it shifts the way people see color and what they're exposed to. So that kind of changes how how our own perception of color is. And now today we're influenced more by, again, technologies moving much faster and changing, hard to keep up. Social media is having a much greater influence on color, color and branding. I mean, we have to look at everybody's a brand now, not just the brands that we buy, but each person is a brand. So what's your color? What's your color of your brand?
Oh, absolutely. When you said it's about historical and culture, I didn't know that it would go that far. So you said from Egypt. Just-
Well, when I actually did a course, a series of courses for a paint company where I focused on each color family. And I did that by starting with what's the history of that color? How did the pigments change throughout time on that color? So that was one part of it. And then what else did I do? I looked at the symbolism of color for that, just for that particular color, the color blue, the symbolism, and then the architectural part of it, and the application of that color. So a lot of different aspects you could touch on, but there was like a whole 1 hour course on the color blue and red and purple. So a lot to talk about.
yeah, and from what you're saying is that although the color have changed over time, but the fundamental aspect of human experience and our perception and emotion is still playing a very very critical role around us and the world we interact in. Right, that has not changed. Maybe
Yeah, well, the ways color affect. I mean, if you look at the science of color and the psychology of color, it's a physiological reaction that we have to certain colors, because it's all light, it's all different wavelengths. That's how we see colors. There are different point in the broad spectrum of light wavelengths. So at its very basic level, we are affected similarly by different color families. But there's so much nuance and so many variables that it does. That's where you kind of have to. You can't just go looking strictly at the color psychology where it says red means this and blue means this and green means this, because there's so many other factors that play into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to actually, make some references, not references, but I want to get your professional view. Uh, can you use color in different form of art and design? And if you do use it, do you think it can be considered as a form of cultural expression? As you are studying about anthropology and human behavior. What are your thoughts on that?
Certainly, I think color is used to evoke emotions and to create a particular mood or an atmosphere. I think artists look at that. They want you to feel something from, say, a painting. So they're going to choose particular colors that are going to hopefully make you feel whatever that is that they want you to feel. You can think of it as, it also is maybe not just one color, but the combination of colors, whether it's a contrast, if we use colors that contrast each other, that's going to create an energy that's different than if you were to combine colors that are similar, like green and blue. That's going to create a different feeling. So there's many ways that color is used in art and design to touch people in that sort of cultural way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So do you kind of do anything which represents any sort of cultural expression in the line of work which you do, or is it just strictly business?
Um, Only, I guess, from an educational perspective, I might do that.
Okay,
If I
could you
were
give
to
me an
create a
example
course,
maybe
like
for
an
that?
educational course. Well, I was just thinking more about what you were saying, though, about the, how it's a reflection of cultural values, and there are ways that that color is expressed and associated with cultures, or like Buddhist monks. Like everybody knows that color is the defining color. The color of their robes is that orange is a defining color for that culture. In certain religions, like in the Catholic Church, they change the colors that they use for that they wear, that they dress the altar in, and that the priests wear, depending on what's happening at that time of year, and what moment it is in the church's liturgical year. They might wear purple versus green. So there's a lot of different ways that there's this symbolic meaning behind colors that you associate with those different cultures. I don't know if that truly answered the question, but other cultural things too. I think of just the Holi festival that you have in India, and just the total joy of an appreciation of color from that festival is deeply ingrained in that culture. That's very specific to that culture, that maybe other parts of the world may not. They may do it in a different way or at a different time.
Yeah, it's starting to make sense. I think I understand what you're trying to say. Let me actually, I'm very, very curious to know about this thing called color forecasting. So could you kind of, in layman's terms, could you explain us the process of color forecasting and what factors are considered when making a prediction around color trends?
Sure. So color forecasting, which I was first introduced to when I joined Color Marketing Group, um, there's a certain process that we follow. Basically, it's what you want to. The main reason for it is that a business wants to sell a product, or offer a service that they might want to market, um, and you can use color in such a way to make it more successful. I mean, you don't want to bring out a product in a color that people are just tired of seeing. If you sort of have your finger on the pulse of what people are looking for at that time of whenever that product's going to be launched, um, you want to know what colors are going to appeal to them. So that's the very core reason why we do color forecasting. But the actual process of it, there's several steps to it. First step being the research, gathering all the current information, what's going on in the world color wise, what's happening now culturally, looking at what things are happening in society that are going to influence people. So, world events, politics, maybe some big cultural or art event that is going to be exposed
C-
to a
can I
lot of
can I
people.
pause you there? I just want to know, like, what exactly are you trying to see when you're trying to do that research specifically? Like, what are you trying
Well,
to
so we
observe?
started. Yeah, so we start at the macro and mega level. We look at and this is something that people can find online too. If they're doing research and they want to know what are the big mega trends and macro trends that are driving consumers. What's that main mindset that people have? And it's several different things. And we identify, maybe 10 different macro trends that are that are important to people. Like one macro trend right now, or mega trend, is just well-being. How can we be healthier uh, in our lives? So that's, you could build a story around that, um, starting with, what does that mean from the color perspective? Then that's kind of how you drill it down. So you gather all these different trends that you think are important, and then you sort of try to identify what are the top ones that are, and how and it's usually an evolution. It's not like you're going to come up with 10 new trends every year. It's an evolution of our lives. I mean, it's how are we shifting, and how is it? We usually look 2 years out when we're doing our forecast, but how are things going to look in 2 years, maybe economically? What's the economy going to, how is that going to impact us if we're really struggling um, with, our finances? How is that going to affect us, and how we're, what we're going to be looking for as a consumer? So you do all that analysis of those different trends, and then taking it down to the level of colors, and again, what colors, looking again at the color meaning, and how, maybe, like I said, with the well-being trend, for example, then you might think of what colors people are going to be drawn to. Perhaps softer, warmer colors that are going to give them a sense of comfort. um, when we went through the lockdown, and people were quarantined, there was a big boom in people redecorating their homes and bringing in a lot warmer colors. There was also sort of a rediscovery of nature for some people that had to get out of their houses and go for walks, and so all of a sudden they're exposed to nature, and then an appreciation of nature, and how can we bring those colors into our home? So those are all ideas that we consider, and then we sort of build a story when we're putting together these color forecasts. If I'm working with a client, I'm not going to just hand them a palette of 10 colors and say, here, these are the colors you should use, because they're gonna want to understand why did I choose those colors. So that's part of why the storytelling happens, of why these particular colors, what was the influencer, what was the driver for my taking this particular orange and shifting it to being a little bit more yellow, or to be a little less saturated or more saturated. Why did I choose that very particular shade of orange? So having the backup for that is important. And when I present back to my clients, that's what I want to give them, is that whole full story of the color forecast.
Wow. I mean, I'm just blown away with the amount of information which you just provided right now.
Told you, color's complex.
I mean, I don't know about the listeners. Like, I'm like really thinking, oh, so that's what you're doing. You're observing what's happening around, and you're trying to find out how it's related and how we can, have some sort of relevance, and what would be a nice application of that relevance in a form of a palette. And you're suggesting this to businesses so that they can create products which work in conjunction. So it's not like a designer approaching a client and saying, yeah, what kind of packaging would you like? And just randomly figuring it out. It goes to that level. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Holy
Well,
shit.
it should, and it should, and that's not even touching on the fact that, when you're doing all of this research and evaluation, is that every client is different, and whatever their product is different. So you have to know who their target market is, and really be in tune with that particular group of people. What are they looking for? So there's a lot of, yeah, a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, if you're enjoying this conversation, and I see the 17 people on LinkedIn, I have a few of my friends on Clubhouse and Twitter. Please invite some of your friends who you think can benefit with this conversation. I don't want the space to be flooded. I just want information to be shared with the right people. So if you know anybody, feel free to share this space and invite a few of your friends. That would mean the world to both of us, who are speaking, me and my guests both. So my next question, Peggy, is that how does the study of color anthropology and psychology contribute to color forecasting? Or does it? I'm guessing it should.
Well, like I said before, it kind of all has to go together. You can't really look at one thing without looking at all of the rest. At least I can't when I'm doing what I do. Um, to look at future trends, you have to understand how it's going to impact consumers and society. So it's understanding the relationship between color and human behavior and emotions. Um, all of those, things come together, and understanding also the, like I said, the nuances of color, the color psychology aspect of it. It really is. It's important, but you can't just get stuck on the generalities. I think anybody could pull up, if you type in color psychology on your computer, you're going to pull up a bunch of infographics that, yellow means this and red means this and green means this. And that's true at its very basic level, but there's also understanding how the nuances of those shifts in those colors can mean different things. Every color family has a warm and a blue side to it. So, a warm blue might give you a different feeling than a cooler blue. Warm blue meaning shifting to the red side, or even uh, to the green side. It all depends on how you look at it and how you combine. And then there's the aspect of not looking at one individual color, but looking at combinations of colors, because that can then create a whole different emotional feeling when you put colors together. And it also can create a sense of time. If you look back at color, if you look back historically on different decades, you have an image in your mind of what the colors of the 70s were and what the colors of the 60s were. And then the most important part of that memory, I think, is the combination of those colors. So, it was the avocado and the harvest gold, and it was all those colors together. You could take any one of the colors from the different decades and you can bring it into today and put it with a different color, and it doesn't look like a color from the 70s anymore. It's a different combination of colors, so it'll give you a different emotional response.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I'm a little confused with the anthropology and the psychology piece. So, I mean, as far as I remember, I think psychology is also to understand the effect of color on human behavior and emotions, right? So, how does that differ? Why do you then people call it color anthropology? I mean, am I missing out something, or did I interpret that wrong?
Well, I think when you look at color psychology, it's more. It, I think people that do study color psychology do also look at the things that I look at, what I call the human behavior aspect of it. The anthropology to me is the human behavior. And I think that psychologists do look at that as well. Um, so there's a lot of crossover there. But to me, it's looking, when I say the anthropology side to me, though, is looking at the history of how,
Oh, how the color
you
was
know,
used over the course of time.
over time, how it shifted over time. I mean, and then we can look back and see that color trends can be cyclical. There's definitely a cyclical shift in colors over time, which helps us in our forecasting. We can see that, maybe every decade, that one decade would be warm and one decade would be cool, and when did that shift happen? And so that's part of the human nature aspect of it too. We just, as human beings, get tired of things and we want to see new things. So there is going to be that sort of cyclical
Yeah.
change. But yeah, to me, it's taking all of those things up and just really focusing in on the human being and how they are, how those different things are impacting them, and how it's changing their mindset that then shifts their preference for color.
I like the part which you said about creating a palette which is specific for a decade. For an example, what I can think of is movies. So let's say that a movie which is made today, but they want to reflect, let's say, the 70s or the 80s. So apart from clothing, the palette which has been developed for that specific shot in within those movies would be based on a color palette from that era, right? So
Yeah.
it would be the atmosphere, how they color grade the whole thing. So
Right.
I think it makes sense. What are your thoughts on how that application works?
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely use that to create different moods. And like you said, they just couldn't put that sort of filter on the whole movie to give it that effect. And you see that too. We had a really good speaker at our summit last fall. Color Marketing Group did, and he spoke to color in gaming. So that's a whole other arena of somewhat, there's cinematography involved there, but it's this whole this use of color there to guide players through a story. There's different symbolisms of things that a player might look for in their game that might guide them to a different place within the game and within the story. That's a whole nother world. I don't know that much about it, except my kids play a lot of it. But but it's really fascinating, and it's that's a sort of a newer thing that wasn't around, you know,
Absolutely,
40
absolutely.
years ago.
See, from what I understand, okay, this is the way I, try to simplifying things, just for my understanding. So what I understood from this conversation, at least so far, is that color anthropology will help you to understand how color was perceived over the course of time through history. And I think psychology, from what you're saying, is how it influences human behavior and emotions right now. And what you're trying to do is you are trying to build up that bridge, which helps you to pair both of these things together. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not magical crystal ball gazers. We have to go where we can find, whatever data that is. And of course, looking back at history is a perfect way of seeing how human beings have, over time responded, and how certain things have driven them to shift and change, and that sort of is giving us our helping us find our way then to the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is really interesting. I got like two more questions, before we start with Q&A. And guys who are, if you're interested in joining the stage, please raise your hand and I would be happy to bring you up. So I know Ashwini sir, we would start Q&A. I just have two more questions. Okay, let's do that, and I'll open up the stage so that you can ask question to Peggy. All right. So while you join the stage, please be on mute because we are recording the conversation live as we speak. So nice to see you, Leslie, and so nice to see you, Ashwini sir. I appreciate you being a part of this conversation. All right. So my next question to you, Peggy, could you help us understand the role of technology and digital media in shaping color trends and prediction? So if you look at today's environment, so Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those things which are happening right now, all those, with AI coming into place, how are you using that to make these sort of predictions? Because it's more on the digital end of the spectrum. So how are you trying to make relevance and figure things out?
Yeah, I think technology and digital media, they've all really impacted the way we do our color trends and on our predictions, and how they're shaped in today's world. It's much more widespread use of it, digital devices, all the online platforms. It's created a lot of opportunities, I think, for creativity, and just totally increased the consumption of color. And I think this leads to the different color trends that we see in the world, that are very unique to today, that we did not see in the past. Um, just the ability to communicate the color trends too, and that gets them out there that much faster. So we always talk about how much technology is moving things so much faster, and it does the same to the world of color. We're consuming so much more on social media, and I think, from my perspective, probably because that's what I'm being fed with the algorithms when I'm looking at social media, but there is just a much greater love and appreciation of color, people that want to understand color more. So that's great. I certainly can't deny how that has been a real boom to our industry. But there's also challenges, and like you mentioned, AI. What is that going to do to the world of color and color forecasting? We talked about that, as part of our color marketing groups, our board we talked about the strategy of our organization and how is that going to change in the future, because we're very focused as an organization on color forecasting there. But how is that going to impact that goal that we have? So certainly don't have the answer to that, other than, as with all AI, it's not there yet. It's still in development, and we can see the value of being able to sort of gather data better, maybe more accurately, maybe if it's put together the right way, if the input is there to correctly gather that data. Um, so it can only be helpful in the end. But I also think that it's never going to replace human beings, because there's so much. Um, there's an art to it. It's not just seeing all the information and spitting it back out. It has to be analyzed, and I don't think that can be done quite yet by the computers, by the robots. Um, but it's certainly, it, like I said, just all of that, all of the technology that's really moving so fast and changing so fast is, to me, only increased the value of color as a tool as well. And if you look at, when you're developing a brand, being able to use a color, or maybe a combination of colors, to identify that brand, I think that is something that is immediately recognized, and you can see how, even with like logo development, has changed in recent years due to our use of digital mediums. Just logos would be flat. Now they're much more dimensional, and they have more color. They have movement sometimes. Sometimes they're more, um, like I said, they're actually a video or a GIF or something. So there's been a lot of changes in that way. But it's same with color. It's all sort of increasing and moving and becoming bigger, but it's making it also more clear how much of a value and how much of a power it has as a tool.
Absolutely. I mean, I still love the logos to be flat. I think that's kick-ass. But
Me too. That's my graphic design background, right? They all should start good in black and white.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I hope it stays that way, because I don't like the three-dimensional thing. I don't know, it just looks ugly. I love the flat version. So
Yeah.
I like
Well,
how.
let me throw another thing at you before you do that too, because I didn't
Uh-huh.
really touch on this, but the whole aspect of color. There's also the component of material and finish when you're talking about color. So that's a whole nother element.
Oh,
As a
let's
graphic,
address that,
like
speak on it.
with my graphic designer eye, when I look at designing something, it's you start it in the black and white and make sure that the linear stuff is all good and all of that, and then you add color. Well, the same with color is that you might start with what's the color going to be, but then how is it going to be applied, and what are the unique characteristics of whatever product material that it's on. How's that going to impact the color? What finish should it have that also will evoke a feeling for the consumer? Should it have a soft touch? Should it be glossy? Should it be slick? Should it be textural? So those are all things that further complicate our color world. It's not there's a lot of different dimensions to it that have to be considered.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's speak about application. So could you give us examples on how you have applied color forecasting knowledge into unique design solutions, like innovative. So you spoke about product development, you spoke about home decor, like people painting stuff inside or coming up with new paint colors, for an example. Where else
Hmm.
has this application applied, this whole forecasting thing been applied to?
Well, I think it applies to all the different industries, and I think the fashion industry, of course, that might be the first thing people think about when you're thinking about color trends. Is how colors change. Historically, they would be very seasonal when it came to forecasting for the fashion industry, and they would have to change more frequently. And every that's another thing to think about too, is that every industry might have a different time schedule for their trends, and certain trends might need to be longer lasting. Don't want to confuse a fad with a trend. When I say trend, I'm talking longer term evolutions. Um, So that's one area. The automotive industry certainly has to have their finger on the pulse, and they have to look even further out because their development times are so much longer. And it's interesting to see, looking at trends in automotive right now. Of course, the top colors are still black, white, gray, silver, but it'll be interesting to see how the electric vehicles and how they will. I think there's a lot of conversation about those colors requiring a little difference, being a little different, not just in the design of the vehicle, but the color of the vehicle. So it'll be interesting to see how that then impacts the rest of the vehicles that are out there. So it's interesting to look at how color trends affect all these different industries, and I'll just give CMG a plug again too, because this is why it's so valuable to me as a member, is that we have members from all the different industries that come together. When we come together, we're all talking about our particular industry and how we see these different macro level trends impacting each of our industries. So that's valuable information to me, especially if it's not just if it's an adjacent industry, but really looking at all the different industries, because they're all going back to what is the human mindset, what's in this in the next 2 years, what's it going to be, and how is it going to be played out within my industry.
All right, all right. I appreciate that share very, very much. Thank you so much for being so insightful, Peggy. Let's actually hear from our audience, and I'm sure this was not something which you guys were expecting when it came to color. I in the beginning I promised you we're gonna have something really, really interesting, and that's what we had. So, I want to welcome a few people here. So, Leslie, thank you so much for joining the stage. Wade and Thomas. So these are my super listeners and contributors to my podcast. Thank you guys for your love and support. So I want to start off with Leslie. So Leslie, welcome. Please flash your mic if you're available. Nice. So do you have a question or do you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just really, truly enjoying this conversation, Peggy and Jason. My background was I had a double major in business and textile design. My family was in the textile industry, and I was a stylist for a while. So that was way back when there was a college called Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science, which is now called Jefferson University in Philadelphia. So it's really amazing how your sensory modes really bring you back to certain experiences or times, maybe as a child, like your sense of smell, smelling like a fragrance that smells like copper tone. As a little girl, my parents would spray me with that, or your hearing sensory. So it's really interesting how everything is intertwined and connected. And as a stylist, people would travel overseas. We would forecast out quite like a year and a half so out. So I'm really enjoying your perspective as a graphic designer, artist, on the way that you perceive color and just all that you bring to the table. So I just want to thank you, Peggy, and
Well,
thanks, Jason.
thanks so much, Leslie. Yeah, it is, I think, important to note that our senses are very intertwined, and the memory um, does impact our preferences for color too. If you grew up and something terrible happened to you, and you associate a color with that, then you're never going to love that color, right? I mean, you're never going to get over that impression. Maybe you just had a miserable childhood and your bedroom was this really bright yellow, where some people that might be, a really happy color. To you, it's not going to be happy. So it's very personal, and that's also good. I'm glad you brought that up too, because it's, as much as we do the color forecasting and do our analysis on colors and associate, psychologically colors with different emotions, we always, as color forecasters, understand that color is personal. And even more so today, with the way technology has changed things to make it make it easier to personalize our lives and our products, whether it's a cover on your smartphone or whatever it is. There's a way to personalize that, so it's a sort of expanded how companies come to market with what colors they're going to offer, or the changeability of colors, how easily people can change colors to suit their mood. So there's a lot of that. That's just another a thought that kind of popped in my head about the personalization of color and how important that is.
All right. Leslie, do
That's
do you have a follow up question? Anything else you'd like to chime in before we move on to Wade?
Yeah, I just wanted to share. I think the beauty of being in the industry and having family in it, it is so ingrained in my blood that years later I went back for my board certifications in functional nutrition. And I use that and integrate that into my lectures and practice of how your senses, when certain sensory modes shuts down, other senses might kick in and might really heighten to a level that is more acute. But just textures, feeling things, fabrics, what people are wearing, and kids with sensory issues. It's really nice that you could bring that into play in different avenues of what you do as a profession. So, yeah, I'm done. Thanks, Peggy, and thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Leslie.
All right, all right, all right. So let's move on further. So Wade, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Again, Wade is a super listener, and how are you? So nice to see you. Do you have a question, or is there anything you'd like to contribute?
I do. Thank you, Jason. This has been quite an enlightening podcast today. Um, my question is, what's been the most fulfilling experience that you've experienced or a client has experienced using your expertise?
Well, I guess from a financial level, the best experience is if they take my advice on a particular color shift within their product line or something, and then it sells well. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. So, but to me, like more on a daily basis, I guess, is just being able to share my passion for color and sort of making people notice it, and pay more attention to it, I guess. That's kind of where I derive a little bit of personal satisfaction. Just kind of that light bulb that goes off when you're talking with people about color, and making them think about things that perhaps they didn't think about, or ways in which color touches them that they hadn't really considered. I think it's a lot of fun.
Wonderful, wonderful. My second question is, I'm just wondering, where do you think that this field is going to be progressing in as far as in the future?
I think it's going to continue as far as the color forecasting part of it. I think it will continue to be, I guess, more and more important to be able to make it have the data evidence there for the forecasts. Um, it's Some people still think of it as it's just people guessing and throwing a arrow at a target for a color, and even when they do understand that there is a lot of research and all of that behind it, I think there is still a need to, like I said, show that evidence of what it is that's driving your forecast. So I think that will sort of be much more important in the future. And also looking at, this is just another conversation that we've had about color forecasting in general, and just about where people are thinking when it comes to color, and the importance of the environment, sustainability. Not one of the fashion industries had to really take notice of people wanting to have more longevity with their purchases, and not wanting to be a throwaway society. So color has an important role there, in that we don't want to be trendy. We don't want to be looking at the fads when we put a product out there, and someone's going to then want to replace it because they're just tired of the color. So those are all factors that we see being important and growing, and how are we going to respond to that? How are we going to react? How are we going to shift our way of forecasting to reflect that desire by the consumer, to be more conscious?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peggy. It's been a great show listening to you today. And thank you, Jason, for allowing me to partake. All the
Thanks,
best.
Absolutely.
Wade. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wade, for your contribution. Please, you're welcome to be on stage. I wanted to say hi to Thomas. How are you, Thomas? So nice to see you on stage. Do you have a question for Peggy, or do you have a comment, or would you like to
Good morning.
contribute? Good morning.
I would love to contribute. Just thank you, Peggy, for allowing me to sleep in an extra hour and a half. I live in Australia. It's actually, the sun is just rising now, so I'm looking
Oh,
at the colours of the Australian sunrise, which I'm obsessed about sunrises and sunsets because I like colours, the pinks and the
lovely.
oranges, all that. But look, I had one kind of sensible question. I had one silly question, so I guess I might ask a sensible one first. So the sensible question is, now I've forgotten it. I gravitate to blues, all sorts of blues and that, and for some reason, every time I buy clothes, they're always, 50 shades of blue. So I guess that's just a psychological safe color for me. As I got older, I'm kind of going to oranges, and I'm wondering, I'm assuming you watch the show Orange is the New Black. That's
Yeah.
a probably a stupid question, but yeah. Look, I just think, do some people just totally love one color, or are you psychologically, do you lean towards, for example, me, blue since I was a little kid? How does it kind of work from a psychological point of view?
Well, blue is historically the top color, I think, for people when you're looking at preferences for colors, especially for men. So that's kind of a general understanding that we have. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think everybody, well, if you ask a color person what their favorite color is, they're probably not going to tell you because they probably will tell you that it changes. At least I do. I have many colors and they change over time. So there's no one color. But sometimes, you learn over time what colors look good on you. So of course that is what's going to drive you to purchase those colors for for the clothes that you wear. So that's not surprising at all.
Thank you. And just the silly question, why do red cars go faster, and why Ferrari is always red?
Because they look good. But it's funny that you say that because my husband was at the car show in Chicago, and he sent me a picture of I think it was a Ferrari in this very minty green. I said, "Well,
Okay.
that's a pretty color, but it just did not belong on that car." We just associate certain cars with certain colors. So why do they go faster? They don't go faster. They just catch your eye more because red is like the color that is going to hit your eye quicker than
Yeah,
if it were
it
a
just
blue
appears
or a dark
fast.
color.
And when you have a midlife crisis, at the age of 52, and you always get the red card, don't you? You don't get a boring blue.
Nothing wrong with that. Color's good. Red's good.
Anyway, thank you. I
More
appreciate
color,
it.
the better.
But thanks. That's it for my silly and sensible question. Thanks, Jason.
No
Thanks for
worries.
sharing.
No worries. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Thomas. I want to welcome somebody new. Hannington, please flash your mic if you're available.
Oh, yeah, sure, I am. Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Awesome. Now, before we engage, I want to let you know that this conversation is being recorded as we speak. So by being on stage and having this conversation, you're giving me verbal consent to go ahead and use it, repurpose it, not only for my podcast, but other monetary benefits as well through this show. So go ahead. Do you have a question or a comment, or is there anything you'd like to contribute?
Oh, yeah, sure, I'm okay with that. I have a comment and a question. I have been doing data journalism for quite a while, and I realized that in visualization, color plays a paramount effect, as well as in the communication. Data visualization is part of the communication part, and as well as in developing, basic apps like, for its psychological effect. For instance, I read somewhere that orange triggers mostly the enzymes that trigger food, or the love for food, something like that. So I'm kindly asking Peggy to help me throw more light on especially the psychological effects of color, especially with respect to the development of products prior to bringing them to the market. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, and what I'm trying to say is that what can be the effect of color and how can it be used, or I mean, in choosing which color to use prior to bringing a product to the market. For instance, an app that is going to interact with an enormous number of people. So, I mean, in making the choice of the color, which color to employ with respect to the kind of app that we are developing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think like your starting point could be looking at the general psychological applications that we assign to color families. I mean, that can be like your starting point to make sure you understand what the really basic general feeling is about different color families. And then you're going to look at the competition and what the colors, what colors are they using. So, use the example of, like the banking world, or even if you look at corporate branding, it's a lot of brands out there. If you've probably seen the infographics of logos, and the majority of them are reds and blues, and there's a reason. It's because they're very classic, and they or they're blue for banking because it's felt to be like a conservative, safe blue, navy blue, or royal blue, or whatever. So there's particular reasons those colors are chosen, but then you also have to decide, do you want to choose it for that reason because it's safe, or do you want to pick something that's completely different that will catch attention? Again, it depends on what your brand is, and what's the personality of the brand for this particular product. How do you want people to think of it, and the colors that you choose will give it that personality. If you chose a happy orange soft color, it's going to give a different personality than if you chose very business like grays and blues. So it's kind of thinking of it as a personality, maybe, like as a way to decide, or to be your starting point. But like I said, there's other things you have to look at too. You have to look at what's, depending on what the product is. If you're talking about an app and it's marketing it, then it's the colors that you choose for marketing are going to be different than if you're talking about a physical product, and how that color is going to be, the color chosen, and how that's going to play out in whatever the material is of that product. So little sort of different things you have to think about depending on what actually the final, element is that you're using the color on. Different thought processes. I don't know if that answers it, if it just gives you more questions, but hopefully that helps.
No, I got it crystal clear. I got what exactly I wanted. Thank you very much. Thank you very
Very
much.
good. Thank you.
All right. Do you have a follow-up question by any chance before we move on to Lenny?
And on my end, no.
Awesome. You're welcome to stay on stage because we're going to have like a rapid fire question round, which involves all participants who are on stage, which we will begin shortly. So, Leslie, Thomas, Wade, and Peggy, I want to introduce you to someone very, very special who I met on LinkedIn just a few days back. Her name is Lenny. And she's really cool, and when we spoke about color, and I don't know whether you know this, Peggy, but there are certain individuals who have trouble with structuring words and all. They use color to bifurcate and break things down. I remember watching a movie just a few weeks back. It's called True Spirited. So this girl who is going traveling by sea for 210 days by herself, and she wanted to figure out she wanted a efficient way how to read, and she had some sort of problem, and she used color to bifurcate words and understand how those things work. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I had such a similar conversation with Lenny just a few days back, and I want to welcome her on stage. I want to introduce you to my close friends here. Thank you so much for being a part. Do you have a question, Lenny, or do you have anything you like to comment or contribute? Okay,
I want to first,
another warning which I want to
yeah.
make is that once she starts, she does not stop. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very much a storyteller, and I am currently being reevaluated because I've been misdiagnosed my entire life. I do have PTSD among some other things, and that's what brings me to my question. I have selective mutism amongst other things because of the traumatic past that I have. I read, write, speak, and color even when my selective mutism acts up. Um, for some reason, art therapy has helped me so much with my mental health from 2013 when I first started seeing a therapist and asking questions about why can't I communicate? Why can I always in a professional setting be on top of everything and such an eloquent speaker, but in my personal life, I have such a hard time. And I was told, well, you know, in a professional setting, you have a script, you have rules, you have guidelines. In your personal life, you are your script, you are your rules. So, for some reason, I've noticed that pastel colors bring me a sense of calmness and peace. Everybody always asks me, what's your favorite color? And I'm like, lilac. And they're like, so purple. And I'm like, no, lilac. Oh, so violet. No, lilac. So my question to you, Ms. Van Allen, is, in your opinion, how can people like me, who have been labeled so many things, introverts, neurodivergents, weird, the quiet ones, how can we, who struggle with communicating, especially those of us that struggle because of traumatic situations, how can we use color more effectively to help us communicate? I first learned how to use color in elementary school because a group of very kind teachers got together and said, hey, give her color pencils. She doesn't know how to structure anything and she's always scribbling and doodling. Give her color pencils. And within, I want to say, the next couple of years, by the time I entered the 5th, 6th grade, all of my notes were being separated by color. I am very much a multitasker in every sense of the word and a polyglot as well. So I have a hard time, as he says, shutting down once I get started. So I'm going to return the floor to you guys now. Thank you again so much for this conversation. I love open dialogue and I'm constantly learning by being silent. So thank you.
That was short, Peggy. I'm telling you, that was short this time. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, Lenny, that's thank you so much, and nice to meet you. And I am so happy that you found color as a way to provide that therapy that you needed, and art as well. I mean, it is certainly a wonderful tool to sort of self discover or just to be an outlet. And color is the same. Color is art to me. You know, when I look around me, when I'm, you know, experiencing nature or, you know, whatever I do, if I'm focusing on color, that is it is art to me, especially when I see a combination of colors that just sings. That is art. So I think, you know, you're on the right track, and you're, you know, continuing to use that, and you don't need my permission. You've already found the way, I think. And I think just continuing to explore it, and give yourself the freedom to use color in whatever way works for you. Again, that goes back to that personal aspect, and you don't have to follow any rules. You can create your own rules when it comes to color, and use it in whatever way works for you.
I want to just say thank you. One of the reasons why I'm also struggling a lot with this, as we talked, you know, when I did meet, you know, our host, I am first generation Mexican American, disabled, and Muslim. I'm the first in a generation of Catholics and Mexicans to leave Catholicism. And in Islam, you know, we are very restricted by our beliefs as to what type of artwork we can have or even the type of music we can listen to. I know there's some people that are going to be listening to this and they're going to be like, oh no, she's saying the wrong things. I
Oh,
am a revert. I am learning. So I do really appreciate you having said that. You don't need my permission. Thank you for that.
okay.
And with
Thanks.
that was the end of my question. I truly appreciate all of this. I've been taking notes and writing things in color this whole time. So I will come back in the future with more questions. But for now, thank you again for your time. Thank you for this open discussion. Things like this resonate with me for days to come and even years to come. I also have a selective eidetic memory. So years from now, I will remember your words in a moment where I'll need them and no one else is around. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate that everybody's able to join in on the conversation and share, and it certainly enriches this whole talk.
Absolutely. Now, you're welcome to stay on stage, Lena. Time for. Oh shit! So the gain was low. I'm gonna try that again. All right. So just in case if you guys are new, we're gonna throw some rapid fire questions. So 2 to 3 questions for my guests and 1 common question for everyone on stage. So my first question to you, Peggy, would be, if colors could talk, which color do you think would have the best sense of humor and why?
I think it would be some shade of pink, because it's a color that's really taking it's historically been pigeonholed in certain areas, maybe been a very gender specific color for a while. And now I think it's it's sort of broken the rules. So I think that's why it would probably have a good sense of humor and be the most interesting.
Awesome. In fact, men are actually starting to wear pink now, to show support, love, and I had a guest, who spoke on that. So yeah, I think it makes sense. Question number 2 for you: if you could choose a color to replace all street signs around the world, which color would you choose and why?
Well, you might be surprised that I would say I would not change that, because it's important. And I don't know if they're the same all over the world, but here they're green. It's green and white. And I think because it's serving an important purpose in wayfinding, and I wouldn't want to mess that up. I would want to keep that consistent. It works. It's visually inclusive to people who even struggle with maybe certain deficiencies in their color vision. It still works, the contrast, the green and the white. So I wouldn't change it.
That's a lovely answer. I would not change it too. Maybe make add a little more depth to the contrast. Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. Now, this is one common question which I have for everyone on stage, and we will start with you, Peggy, and go around the room. So, if you could create a new color, what would you name it, and what emotions would it evoke? So let's hear from you.
Ooh, new color.
You have to name it and also state what emotion it would evoke.
Naming it is so hard. I guess I'm going to complicate it, because I want to create a new color that changes. A color that can shift to suit whatever mood that you might want it to be. And I know there's already some technology out there for some paints that do that, but I guess I'm kind of cheating, because I want to say that that's the color. The color is a color that can change. And so I guess the name of the color, hey, let's go with the freedom theme. We'll call it freedom.
All right, so it's gonna be called as freedom. What kind of hue it would be?
What kind of
Hue.
hue? Changing. It changes. It's not one set hue.
Oh, it's changing.
It can be anything. It can change. It can shift.
All right. Glad you didn't say transparent. All right. so
That's really tricky.
Okay, so does it also evoke the same emotion, a sense of freedom?
It would evoke whatever emotion it needed to in whatever way it was shifting.
All right.
I guess I want to have it all. I want to have it all.
All right. So let's go, through the entire speaker panel and get everyone's perspective on it. So I'm going to start with Hannington, because you're the first time you have joined. So I want to give you the honor. Please flash your mic if you're available.
Oh, yeah, sure, I am.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
I think you asked which color I would make. and or if at all I get a chance for the entire world, something like that. But then I don't think I would make a fixed color. Reasons being, each color is beautiful in its own sense. Just like I gave a comment some few minutes ago that some colors trigger different aspects in our brain. So, and even in the visualization aspect. So, for instance, when you go to Japan, you do realize that they are having issues with the traffic lights. Somehow, somewhere, they can be blue. The blue is interchanged for the green. Imagine something like that. So I think every color can be beautiful in its own sense. That's how I look at it. Thank you.
Awesome. Nice way of saying that, I don't want to think. So thank you. And he didn't want to answer the question. So he was like, I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to keep things the same way. So I'm just joking, bro. Thank you. Wade,
You-
go ahead, my friend.
No, I'm just grateful, but then I just look at it that way, that it's more beautiful the way it is. So I don't think that I will change anything for anything. I just want maybe use one for the other for other reasons, but it's just beautiful the way it is. Thank you very much. So otherwise I wouldn't change. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I was just joking. I appreciate your contribution. So let me ask Wade, Wade, if you are the one who was supposed to like come up with like a new color and you had to name it, what kind of emotion would that, would offer? So
It,
let's hear from you. I'm really
it's
interested.
funny because you always come up with these unique and almost strange but great questions for your panelists. So this is just it's amazing because it almost stumps everybody. Um, I'm very creative and I love to paint. So I'm always dabbling with different hues and so forth in my paintings. Um, the hue or color, I would have to say, would be something more of a very warm and uh, heartfelt kind of color. Uh, and the reason for it is the whole mindset behind it is that we need to create more empathy and love and cherishness around the world. We're getting too hard in the mindsets out there and unable to open ourselves to other people's mindsets, perspectives, and if it somebody's mindset or perspective isn't the same as ours, it's almost like people are just absolutely unable and unwilling to acknowledge or empathize with that perspective. My perspective is my perspective, and if you don't agree with it, then uh, SOL with you. So I think we need to, a color that would really entrust love and openness and a heartwarming type of thing. If that answers your question.
That's awesome. You know what? I have a color for you. It's a color that we forecasted with Color Marketing Group called Bridge, and it was a blue green, and that was kind of the conversation around it. This was the color that was going to be the bridge.
Oh,
Oh, gee.
so cool.
Saving the world with color.
But that's exactly the name that I was thinking of, though. Like, and
Awesome.
I'm not ESP, so we've never met before, right, Peggy?
No.
Thank you, Jason.
No problem. I appreciate that very, very much. So let's hear from Thomas. So Thomas, what are your thoughts on this?
So apologies for the background noise. I'm at the cappuccino shop, but I like blue as I just mentioned before, but I also started buying things orange, bright orange, and I bought some runners or running shoes. They're orange, and unfortunately, as soon as my wife saw them, she went very white, pale white, and she said, "Do you take them back?" Because she thought that I was being a bit crazy in my middle age, that I've changed from blue to orange. So second midlife crisis. But my question, or my color would be a combination as a result of blue and orange. And I would call it some sort of transition color from conservatism to, new age radicalism. And I don't know what I'd call it, but I don't know when you cross blue with orange, what do you get?
Blue orange.
Well, I can see it as a gradation. That might be better than trying to combine them. Combine them, they might get kind of muddy.
Gradation. Okay, well,
Combinations are good.
let's call it a combination gradation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. What kind of emotion do you want it to evoke, Thomas? You didn't say that.
I want calmness with my wife emotion. I'm outside the coffee shop looking at a bright orange milk crate right now, and it's causing me nervousness because I'm thinking that my wife wouldn't want me to bring the milk back in that bright orange crate.
Well, you proved my point. I think I said earlier that how, everybody has an opinion about color.
Certainly my wife does, Peggy. But yeah, I don't know what I'd call it, but I'd just call it whatever that makes people feel good. Thank you. I'll stop crapping on because otherwise you'll end up taking too long.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Okay, let's hear from Leslie. So Leslie, would you like me to ask you that question again?
Yes. Yeah, I was multitasking and dropping off my son at the gym with his friend. So yes, please ask me the question again.
Okay, sure. If you could create a new color, what would you name it, and what kind of emotions would it evoke? And if you need time, it's okay. We can take a pause and I can circle back to you.
I got a good one. This was actually a color.
Okay.
My creative mind and being in the fashion industry for so many years before going into nutrition. So hopefully I could say this, but it's not like a dirty word, but I guess, I don't know. It was one of the hottest #1 colors for a lipstick company, and it was called Orgasm. And we'll leave it at that. It was a hot red. How's that?
That's a good description. There you go. It's very evocative of what the mood is. Yep.
All right.
There you go.
Nice one, Leslie. Really cool. Okay, so let's hear from Lene. So Lene, same question. Would you like me to rephrase that question for you, or do you have something interesting to say?
Oh no. So first off, I'd like to just address one thing. I feel like there seems to be a general consensus amongst a few of us, even in the crowd, that we are more about tones, shades, and hues than we are about a particular color. And I love what you were saying earlier on in the conversation. Like, thank you for not wanting to think. But I do want to just really point this out because I spoke with you the last time. You did mention this podcast is not for the faint of heart. We do talk, on a very in the Hispanic culture, it's like tuteándote, as if we're friends. But for those that can't see, you actually have 2 shades of colors in your profile picture. Like, it's not just one. I don't think I could come up with a specific color. I'm very much attracted to the lilacs, the pinks, the royal blues, the turquoise. I think if I were to create a color, it would be an ever-changing hue and shades, kind of like a lava lamp, or those new scent diffusers that if you press the button it just transitions from shades and colors until it stops. And if I were to name it, I would probably name it Exploring or Bloom, one of the two, because it's going to be ever-changing, and I think it goes a lot with my own personal journey, depending on what I'm feeling, depending on where I'm at, if I'm out in nature, if I'm at a conference, if I'm at work, if I'm out with friends. Different forms of color, different forms of art, different colors in the sky and the clouds when it rains, they all attract me. So I think it would just be a never-ending change of chameleon-like colors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can get on board with that.
All right, all right. These are amazing answers from each and everyone out. There's nothing right or wrong here. I stumbled upon, I think it was a band, or I read this somewhere about something called as Luminary. I think it's a band. I think so. But I loved the word, but it just sounded very mathematical. So if I have to choose a color, I would call it something like Lumi or luminaire, something of that sort. I don't want to call it luminary because it just sounds very geometric or something of that sort. So it would be like a nice shade of yellow, bright. Okay, and I wanted to evoke feelings like warmth, joy, and optimism. More like a beautiful morning, something of that sort. So yeah, that's my answer. Just in case if you're
That sounds
wondering.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Sounds beautiful, and I like that you gave it a name that had an action. So it did something. The color did something, right?
Yeah, yeah, something of that sort. So yeah, that was my answer. Just in case if you guys wonder, I don't just simply ask question; I also answer as well. And on that note, and I know we are going to be reaching the 90-minute mark very soon. So Peggy, I want to give you enough opportunity to speak about your business. Tell us what is your vision with colorfuel.com, and what are you trying to achieve? Let's say 5 to 10 years down the line.
Well, I guess for me, the most important part of it is, like I mentioned before, is just sharing the passion of color and sharing the possibilities of it, and all that color can do. Whether it's in the business world where you're capitalizing on its ability to do something for your brand or for your product, but also personally, understanding how color can change your how you feel, and how you can use color to uplift yourself. And so the more I can share, I guess, of all the knowledge I have on color, that I'm continually always trying to learn more. There's you never learn all that there is to know about color. You're always learning more. And so if I can continue to learn more and then share what I learn, that's kind of what my goal is.
That is super cool. So if I ask you, like, what kind of a legacy you want to leave for yourself as an individual, what would be your answer to that?
It would probably be along the same lines. I want to be remembered as someone who um, maybe helps people notice and appreciate color. If it's just specifically about color, that's what I guess I would want my legacy to be, that people notice it. It's there for the taking. It's there for them to do with, to use it for their own benefit. So
All right, all right. Before we wrap things up, I see Ashwini sir who has joined the conversation. He's a close friend of mine, Peggy, and other guys whom you're listening to our conversation. So, sir, do you have a question, or would you like to contribute to this conversation? Ashwini sir, you have to unmute. All right,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm audible to you.
Yes, yes, loud and clear.
Fine. See, I'm really enjoying the conversation. It's very fruitful and very informative. Currently, don't have any question, but definitely would like to have the entire clip or entire this conversation link if you can send me. But currently, I don't have any question.
All right, no problem. I will be more than
Yeah,
happy to send you the link once I upload it on
please.
Spotify, Apple, Google, and other platforms. I'll be happy to message you directly. So Peggy, since you were speaking about your business, what would be a really cool way how people can reach out to you? Ask questions about color, or what kind of business owners do you think would practically make sense to reach out to you when it comes to assistance with color?
well, really anybody who's looking to develop a product line or create a palette, or if you're if you're maybe early stages of your marketing branding campaign and you want to know what colors would work in marketing or developing your brand, I can help with that. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Color Fuel is the company name. My website is color-fuel.com, so you can reach me there. But always happy to talk about color. And if I can't specifically help you, I have my network of color marketing group friends who there might be somebody that might be specific to your color need that I could recommend as well. So another shout out to Color Marketing Group. It's a great opportunity. It's a great network of people in the field of color, all different sort of varieties of jobs that people do within the field of color. I mean, I'm completely focused on color. A lot of people do other aspects of their job, and color is just a portion of it. But all the different industries. So that would be the main way to reach me.
Awesome. So just guys, in case if you guys, girls, and everybody else who are out there listening to this conversation, if you're on LinkedIn, you should be able to find all the web links under the event description. Or under the event comments. It's listed on both the places. Just scroll. You should be able to find Peggy's website, Instagram, and even LinkedIn details. Also, please send her a connection request. If you have questions which are very basic and general, please Google it and just utilize Peggy for her wisdom and knowledge which she has about color. So what I'm trying to say is that don't send her spam or junk messages. Humble request. And before we wrap up this show, I also want to take a moment and express my sincere gratitude to all my amazing guests, including you, Peggy, who have joined us in season 3. Your expertise, insights, stories, and everything was inspiring, and I think it made season 3 a huge success. So if you guys would be wondering why I'm saying this, is because season 3 is actually the last episode for season 3, and I'm gonna take a 40-day break so that I can chill, do nothing, and just relax and recoup my energy and start season 4, which will commence on April the 12th. So I want to thank you also, my listeners, because without you there is not gonna be any podcast by Jason Thomas. Your support and feedback and engagement is the driving force, for my continued success and growth of my podcast and even my business also. So whether you have been with us from the very beginning or whether you just discovered my podcast, I want you to know that we appreciate you and we do this for you, and I'm really committed to bring you the best content and listening experience as possible. And that's one of the reason I do all my show live, because I want to tell the world that being real and being authentic is the right way to go. So that's why no post-production shit, just completely raw. You would find it exactly the same way it's been recorded. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Peggy, and thank you to all my other guests and listeners who consistently support my show. I can't wait to continue this journey with you on next season. And again, next season will commence on April 12, 2023 at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I would have links for other time zones. When I create the event, I would reach out to you, my friends, on LinkedIn, share posts, stuff like that. So keep your heads up. I will send in details, as we progress ahead in the next couple of weeks. So do you have any final thoughts, Peggy, before we say goodbye to one another, at least for season 3?
I just wanted to say thank you, Jason. It's been a very awesome experience working with you on this, on the lead up to the podcast. You were great at preparing me, and it's just been a great experience. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been a great experience having you also, because I learned quite a lot. I have all my notes. So it's going to be a very, very interesting episode. And I'm sure many people got value from this. So I would be uploading this in the next few hours. So I think by today, end of the day, or by tomorrow, you should have all the links available on to access and hear it back, just in case if you missed. So on that note, I want to say thank you. Take care of yourself. Have a lovely morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Take care of yourself, guys.